This is The Drive with Tim Donnelly, 99.9 The Fan, the aluminum company of North Carolina. Myself, Dennis Cox, out here for their fall open house. Stop by today and tomorrow. Check it out. Graham, as you just heard, back at the studio, keeping everything up and running. This weekend, not only is there a Hootie concert tonight, but there's a UNC football game tomorrow where they're hosting NC Central. And I struggled with how I wanted to articulate what I think UNC needs in this game. If you listen to the show often enough, first of all, you're awesome. But we've talked about it. They need to continue working their offense under the leadership of their new quarterback, Conner Harrell, who replaced Mack Johnson, who was hurt in their first game in a pretty brutal knee injury. By the way, if you didn't see it earlier this week, it was confirmed by Mack Johnson's dad, Brad Johnson, former NFL quarterback, that he is now officially back from Minnesota, flew in. So he's in Chapel Hill. He gets to be with his team and has to be just a more comforting environment as he begins the recovery from, like I said, a pretty gruesome knee injury. So Conner Harrell is now the quarterback. They're going to have to continue growing into that, whatever that offense ends up being. But as a team, I think this is the best way I can say it. I think they just need a normal game. Every game that we've watched through week 1 and week 2 for UNC, it's felt like the entire game was like the last 10 minutes of a middle school basketball game where it's tied and you have, one kid thinking he's Jimmy Chitwood. You have another kid thinking you should just waste the time and play for overtime. You have somebody arguing with a ref. You have somebody looking to their dad and mom in the stands going, what should I do? You have a coach screaming press. It's just everything is chaos. And
someone yelling, shoot it.
Yeah, there's someone yelling, shoot it. Someone dribbled it off their foot. It's just, where did the second basketball come from? It's all chaos. Not all of that is UNC's fault, right? The first game, you're starting on the road in Minnesota, bad weather. Your quarterback gets hurt. There's a delay. It's an unfamiliar opponent. PJ Fleck brings his own chaotic energy. Game 2, you're at home, but you have the new quarterback. Your starting running back gets hurt. Your
starting center gets hurt.
Your starting tight end gets hurt. Your leader on defense hurt himself in the weight room on Thursday. So there's all of that. You end up running a double reverse flea flicker for a 50-yard touchdown.
It's a fun play.
It's fun, but it's not normal.
No.
There's just so much chaos going on that I think they just want, for lack of a better term, a normal run-of-the-mill win.
Just a basic day.
Just the equivalent of an 8-play drive.
Okay.
You go out there and obviously if you can score 50-yard touchdown runs, you do it.
Sure.
But there is something comforting about knowing the defense doesn't have to make a mistake. They don't have to miss a tackle. We can just 5 yards, 7 yards, 7 yards, 12 yards, 3 yards, maybe, holding penalty. All right, but now we got 12 yards, 8 yards, got the first down. Just a normal drive. That's what they're looking for. And this is kind of the stat that I think exemplifies it. Omarion Hampton's a beast, okay?
To say the least.
He's probably, depending on how you feel about, Ollie Gordon or the running back from Boise State, Omarion Hampton's in the top 2 or 3 running backs in the entire country.
He's in that conversation.
And
no doubt about it.
He hasn't scored a touchdown yet this year.
No.
They've won 2 games. So, hey, you don't give anything back. It is what it is. You're happy with the way they've turned out.
Granted, he only played about a quarter and a half against Charlotte last week.
True. But he has 41 carries this year. He has over 200 yards rushing. A season ago, he had 15 rushing touchdowns on 243 carries. I did some math, and to everybody that double checks my math when I do it live on air, I did it ahead of time with a calculator.
Smart.
And I wrote it down in my notes. If he scored touchdowns at that same rate, right, 15 out of 243 carries, just talking rushing touchdowns. He did have a receiving touchdown as well last year, but we're just talking rushing here. If he did the same touchdown rate, scored at the same rate, he would have 2.5 on average touchdowns this season. He has none. And I can't think of anything more normal for UNC than watching Omarion Hampton grind up yards and force his way into the end zone. I think it's important to see that. I think it's important for Conner Harrell to recognize anytime I need to, if Omarion Hampton plays, by the way. He didn't finish last week's game, but they did say he was available. He was on the bike. He could have come in if they felt like they needed him. They didn't feel like they need him, especially because Goss, the freshman running back, was running so well. But that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like an Omarion Hampton drive it's like the tides. It's like taxes. It feels inevitable. And UNC needs some of that. They need some of the not unusual. And I think that can lower everyone's heart rate. It can build confidence in your new offense, build confidence in your new quarterback, and allow everyone to settle in a little bit, right? There's a reason why so many of the big, quote unquote, big schools schedule those tune-ups for their first game.
Yep.
It's hard going from 0 to 60 in 2.4 seconds, which is what UNC had to do. Now it's like they get a chance to, throttle down, right? Take a break, get out of the car, stretch your legs, get back in, and slowly ramp back up. And this isn't disrespect to NC Central. They are a well above average, solid FCS HBCU program.
Yeah, they won the Celebration Bowl 2 years ago, and last year they're in the FCS playoffs. So yeah, they're no pushover. Trey Oliver has built a solid program there.
So I'm not saying this is a game where you go out and name your score. I'm just saying it's a game where you should be able to make it feel like a UNC football game rather than something where everybody's hair's on fire or just that frenetic energy that they've been able to overcome. Right, frenetic energy through the first two games. You won the first two games, so it's been more frenetic for the teams you're facing. I just think UNC should be looking for a normal Sunday where your fans are happy. There's maybe little memorable out of the game, but you won by 30, like that kind of deal where it's just like, I don't know if I remember any individual plays, but I remember us playing well. I don't like it like that is, Omarion Hampton he was good. He had, 5 yards a carry, 6 yards a carry, but he didn't have the 80-yarder, but he, most plays they were moving forward.
So just like a nice, tasty lunch, like nothing crazy, like good, solid sandwich, apple chips, cookie, soda, but like nothing fancy, but good, just solid day.
From a place you go to often.
Yeah, like my go-to lunch spot.
You know exactly what you're going to get.
Day.
You don't always have to get like the foie gras. That's the fancy. I don't eat fancy dinners very often. You don't always have to go with like the wild and crazy out there meal. Sometimes like a burger does the trick, and that's what they're looking for this weekend when NC Central comes to town.
I know against Charlotte, they only had 2 trips to the red zone because all their touchdowns kind of came from distance, like the flea flicker, the reverse flea flicker, big touchdown to Hamilton. They had the end around from McCollum. They had the pass on the left side to Nesbitt. They didn't have a whole lot of red zone snaps. You think that's kind of like Hampton's just kind of a byproduct of the offense not getting into the red zone a whole lot?
Definitely could be. And
I know against Minnesota they had 3 trips, but it was like just barely in the red zone. They settled for a bunch of field goals.
And I admit it's not a perfect stat. I was trying to just kind of encapsulate my point. But I mean, if you start getting into that, then you got to get into it last year and say, well, Drake May ran in a bunch of touchdowns. That probably should have been Omarion Hampton. So maybe that 15 is really 20. So maybe the 0 this year is really 1. It's like, I don't want to you get too bogged down in the well, actually. So my point is, I think they just want a game where you get up by 13, then at half you're up by 17, then somewhere in the third quarter you're up by 21, and it just is a growing game. That's what I'm looking for from UNC.